You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. There are two black Republicans in the House of Representatives, one in the United States Senate, and one of them out of Florida says that the Congressional Black Caucus is keeping him from joining. Joining us right now is Congressman, first of all, Byron Donalds. Congressman, glad to have you on Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Of course, anytime. Thanks for having me.
First and foremost, and so you said you wanted to join. When did you last communicate with the Congressional Black Caucus? What was the process and what was said to you? And who did you talk to?
Well, actually, it was really the first week I was up here on Capitol Hill after swearing in. I talked with a couple of members. I know Joyce Beatty and I, we had a brief conversation on the floor. The question was asked, would I be interested in joining? I said I would be interested in joining. When I was in the Florida legislature, I had joined. I was a part of the Legislative Black Caucus for 4 years. And so at that point, it was just, she was like, okay, well, we'll be in touch. I said, okay. And we didn't hear anything. So I had my staff reach out, a couple times over the last few months. We never heard anything. And then last week, the story drops on BuzzFeed, which, shocked me, shocked us here, in my office. And then, here we are.
So when you say it shocked you, and so they, of course, BuzzFeed did a story saying that you were being blocked from joining the CBC. You reached out. You had not joined them. So that was not a story that your staff put out. So you're not aware where the story came from.
No, we never put anything out. In my office, my staff understood that we weren't going to talk about it. We were going to just, have those conversations quietly. So when you see an article drop, you're kind of like, well, where'd this come from? And I mean, look, let's keep it real. If I was going to drop a story, I wouldn't drop it in BuzzFeed. That doesn't make any sense. I would have dropped it on FoxNews.com, but that's not where it dropped. Obviously, they've covered it. CNN has covered it. A lot of people have. But I'm not in the business of dropping leaks to reporters. That's not how I operate. For me, if I feel a certain way, I'll come and meet with you directly and tell you. I'm not going to use media to do it.
Why do you want to join the CBC?
I think actually it's important to have the conversations that affect, obviously, the black community and the different policies that will. My politics might be different from a lot of the members in the CBC, but that's no different than how it was when I was in the Florida legislature. But I think those conversations from all sides of the political spectrum are very, very important because it can help actually distill a lot of these ideas down into ways that will be most effective, not just for the black community. Because you got to understand that when you legislate, you can't just write a bill for the black community. You have to write legislation that impacts the entire country. So obviously you want it to have positive impacts on the black community, but you also have to understand in the back of your mind, it's going to have impacts for all of the country. You want to make sure that those things operate for everybody so everybody can thrive and succeed. Secondarily, I think it's important that you have these relationships that exist in the legislative process because it changes it from just being Congressman Donalds or the new black Republican to being, well, that's just Byron. And so let me sit down with Byron and figure out where he's coming from. I can share with him where I'm coming from, and maybe we can find a way forward.
When it came to the passage of the House Bill 1 dealing with the issue of voting, how did you vote?
I voted no on that bill, and I'll tell you why. Because, first of all, in Florida, we actually have, in my view, the best election law in the country. We have massive access points to the ballot. You can get your absentee ballot anywhere about 2 to 3 months before election day. It's really like 3 months before election day. You have really good opportunities to vote through early voting, some of the best in the country. And then, of course, you have election day. We do have voter ID laws. We have things like that have been in Florida law for more than 20 years. And so, in my view, representing a district in Florida, why would I support the federal government taking over election law when I know my state and the area I represent already has great election laws where people have the opportunity to go vote and nobody challenges them?
Because the reality is that it's not just a question of what happens in your state, it's what's happening in other states as well. When it came to the certification of electors, how did you vote?
I actually voted not to certify in Pennsylvania and Arizona.
Why?
But the other 48 states were never contested.
Why?
Well, because very clear. Hold on, let me get to that. Because it was actually clear based upon the information I was looking at that in Arizona and Pennsylvania, there were violations of election law. And so you have a situation where under the Constitution, state legislatures write election law. And I know the argument is, but there was a pandemic, so adjustments had to be made. But let's be very clear. It is not the role of a supervisor of elections or the state elections officer or any judge to change election law.
But I thought Republicans believed in the rule of law and judges ruled. And in fact, I thought Republicans believed in the rule of law and judges ruled. Secondly, you also had more than 60 court cases where it was challenged in the courts. Donald Trump and his team lost all of them.
The point is not whether the court cases were won or lost. The point is that when you're looking at electoral college votes, you have to look at what the law was and what the actual implementation of law was at the time. The judges and the courts, they have their role. They did whatever they felt was necessary, but Congress also has a role as well. Congress does have the responsibility of certifying electoral college votes, and it's important for people to understand that this is not the first time electoral college votes were challenged. They were challenged in 2000. They were challenged in 2004. There was a member of the Democrat conference who challenged in 2016, and that went away. So these things have happened in our past in our country. So just saying now with the election of Joe Biden that because you challenged in 2020, now that creates some dynamic where now you're to be ostracized or punished or whatever.
So I'm curious. So that's very curious because you just said that you did not want federal law change to impact voting there in Florida, but you in Florida are forming an opinion on voting in Arizona and Pennsylvania when the elections in Arizona and Pennsylvania were actually certified by Republican officials and others in those two states. And so how do you know what's better in Arizona and Pennsylvania when you're in Florida?
Because there's a process where Congress certifies and ratifies electoral college votes.
But no, you answer my question. How do you know? You answer my question. How do you know what's better? How do you know that there were irregularities when there are officials in Arizona and Pennsylvania who have said there wasn't?
The difference is that HR1 actually goes against most of the way the Constitution is actually written.
No, that's not what I asked. That's not what I asked. Congressman, that's not what I asked.
HR1 and election laws.
No, that's not what I asked. It's not what I asked. What I asked is, how do you stated that there were election irregularities, but there were officials in Arizona and Pennsylvania, even of your own party, who said that the elections were fair, the elections that you did not have violations, that you did not have fraud. How are you, a congressman in Florida, to know what actually happened in Arizona and Pennsylvania when the officials there stated what happened in their own state?
Well, listen, first of all, you're assuming that I can't read as well. Of course I
No, I'm not assuming. But if there are people of your own party who have publicly stated, I'm just trying to understand, how do you know what happened there when they say it didn't happen?
Let me answer your question. Let's take the state of Pennsylvania, for example. It is crystal clear, no matter what anybody wants to say, is that the state Supreme Court changed election law unilaterally. Under Pennsylvania's law, you're not allowed to accept ballots after the polls close on election day. The state Supreme Court of Pennsylvania unilaterally changed that to accepting ballots 3 days after election.
Are they the highest court in Pennsylvania?
Can I finish my point? If you change the law at the court level, but knowing that under the Constitution, state legislatures are the ones who write election law, you're changing the rules at the end of the game. That's the reality. That's what happened. And so is
the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court the highest court in the land?
You have a decision to make at the level we have when it comes to certifying electoral college.
Let me ask you this question. Did the United States Supreme Court, I got to ask you a question.
Not to certify, based upon the reasoning that in those two states in particular, laws, the actual implementation, the actual practice of elections were not followed under law that was passed by the state legislature, which is the law of the land under the United States Constitution.
Did Donald Trump and his people sue, and did the Supreme Court reject the argument that you just made?
The Supreme Court chose not to take up the case, but that is
That's a rejection.
They did not take up the case.
That's a rejection.
But the Supreme Court is a separate branch of government.
But wait, hold on. But so is Congress. And so I'm trying to understand. If you're making an argument,
it's vote in front of us, we have the opportunity to cast that vote as well. Just because a court says something or the Supreme Court says something, when the matter comes before Congress, you still have to cast a vote, yay or nay. They didn't lock the voting machines and said, well, this is all over, and so there's no vote for Congress to take. There is actually a vote. There is a constitutional process that happens.
Got it.
It's a constitutional process that has happened multiple times before. And so to distill this whole entire argument down to certification votes on January 6th, that's really far afield from the full conversation we're even having right now about membership in the Black.
No. I'm asking you, but you talked about.
This is why I'm going to make that point, because if the premise of this conversation we're having right now is that my intellect, my past, my road from the inner city to the halls of Congress, my policy beliefs, if all those things are now irrelevant because my vote on certification.
No, I didn't say that. First of all, who said that? Who said that?
That's the argument that you're presenting.
Actually, you're wrong. No, Congressman, you're wrong. Congressman, you're wrong. I'm asking you a series of questions in terms of how you voted on particular bills that, for the Black community, in terms of where issues are. George Floyd Justice Act, how did you vote?
Wait, say that again. You broke.
George Floyd Justice Act, how did you vote?
Oh, I didn't vote for that bill. I voted against it. And the reason why I voted against that bill is because of qualified immunity. I think the qualified immunity provisions in that bill are actually going to be very harmful to police forces in urban corridors, because the reality of qualified immunity, in my view, and having talked with many officers in law enforcement, is that if you change qualified immunity standards, you're actually going to have less officers on the street. If you have less officers on the street, it's actually going to lead to higher crime rates in our cities. We're already seeing that right now with the elements in different cities where police budgets have been shrank down, or you want to call it defunding police, or whatever you want to call it. The correlation effect is real. If there's less officers on the street, crime rates have gone up.
Well, first of all, there are examples. Congressman, there are examples where police in Chicago and Baltimore chose not to actually do their job because they were angry when one of their own actually were indicted by the DA, and then also crime went up because they chose to slow down. Let me ask you another question. So you saw the John Lewis Act. How did you vote on that?
This is the bill about John Lewis's Act dealing with voting rights, but also bringing back pre-clearance.
Yep.
Is that what we're talking about?
Yep.
I voted no on that bill. I don't believe that we need pre-clearance.
The COVID bill, how did you vote?
Oh, that bill is trash. I voted no on that bill.
On the American Relief, how did you vote on that?
Say that again?
On the American Relief Plan, how did you vote on that?
Wait, what? Say that again.
You had the COVID bill, and so you said that bill was trash. So here's my question. Out of all the bills that have come through the House, where African Americans have that from an African, first of all, the COVID hate crime bill, how'd you vote on that?
The Asian American hate crime.
Actually, not the Asian American. It's actually not the Asian American hate crime bill. It's actually Asian Americans not even in the actual title. But to paraphrase it, it's been called the anti-Asian hate crime bill. How'd you vote on that?
I voted no on that bill because we don't need to have that bill. That bill is not necessary for what's happening right now in the country. Do you have an issue with what's say to be Asian hate? That may be rising, potentially, maybe. But let's also.
It's not potentially, maybe. The facts are there. The data is there. It was even documented under the Trump DOJ.
When you had the shooting that occurred in Atlanta, Georgia, every element of law enforcement came out and said at that point in time, and several weeks after, that it was not a quote unquote hate crime. There were other things that were.
That was one shooting.
To pass that bill, so that's what happened. So I voted no on that bill.
Gotcha. If making Juneteenth becomes a national holiday, comes before the House, how would you vote?
I'm sorry, we were talking over each other.
If it comes before the House to make Juneteenth a national holiday, how would you vote?
Oh, I would vote yes on that. I think Juneteenth should be a national holiday.
So if HR4 comes to the House floor, how would you vote?
Which one is
HR4? HR40 deals with creating to study the impact of slavery. It's called the reparations bill to create a study of it, not actually to grant reparations, but to actually study the very issue. How would you vote?
Actually, I just finished reading that bill. I would vote no on that bill.
Gotcha. So out of all the things I talked about, the only one that you said you would vote for is Juneteenth. And so if you did a poll of the issues that black folks care about, where do you line up in the interest of African Americans?
I think if you're talking about what the interests of African Americans lie, the first one is having quality access to education.
Actually, that's not number one.
Actually, can I talk? If you're talking about the issues that actually impact people and families in their community.
No, actually, I'm talking about polling data has been done, and that actually is not number one. The criminal justice reform is number one. So, but go ahead.
Okay. Education, healthcare, a quality economy, and yes, of course, criminal justice policies. If you actually know my history and my record, when I was in Florida's legislature, I worked on criminal justice policies. It's one of the things I worked on, and I support actually having quality reforms to make sure that our criminal justice system actually recognizes and comes into the 21st century while also making sure that we keep communities safe. That's something that I do believe in. I think that's important to do with respect to what Congress has passed up here. But I would also say that you also can't take the baseline of what this Congress has passed or this Congress has put forward and say, well, you didn't vote on these bills, so now this somehow this is a window into what your ideas are. Because the truth of the matter is there's been no discussion about the measures that have come before Congress. These are things that have gone directly to the floor from the Democrat Party, from the majority party up here on Capitol Hill. So there's been really no discussion. There's been no ability to make amendments. There's been no ability for debate. And so you're asking me to vote yes or no on policy ideas that I disagree with for portions of those policy ideas. And that's the way I vote.
So, but again, when you're talking about, again, speaking to those particular issues, if you poll African Americans in the George Floyd Justice Act, it will poll very, very high. You voted against that. If you poll African Americans on the issue of COVID relief, the bill that was passed will poll very, very high. You voted against that. And so we can go down the line. And so, again, when you're talking about speaking to the interests of African Americans, the Congressional Black Caucus is called the conscience of Congress. Yet you also supported Donald Trump, someone who viciously attacked many members of the Congressional Black Caucus, especially women, never apologized to any of them, and you would support him again. I take it if he ran 2024 that you would actively campaign for Donald Trump and support him?
Again, I'm going to say to make the same point I made earlier. My point and my support.
No, I'm just asking. I'm asking if Donald Trump runs in 2024, would you support and actively campaign for him? Yes or no?
I said earlier, which is already now the tone of this entire interview, and I don't want to get on your interviews. How you do it is how you do it.
No. I'm just Congressman. Understand? I'm just asking a series of questions. I'm just asking a series. Congressman. I'm gonna let you finish. I'm just asking a series of questions to know where you stand. Go ahead.
And let me make my point.
No, go ahead.
Here we go. So all I'm saying is that if you are going to distill down who I am in my entire journey to get to Congress and the thoughts and the ideas and the principles that I do have, to a vote on a series of bills which are highly partisan bills and my support for President Trump, I don't think that's actually a good thing for our politics.
But Congressman, that's not what I did. Congressman, that's not what I did. That's not what I did. Congressman, my audience, here's the deal. Congressman, my audience doesn't know who you are. They don't know who you are. And no, they don't know who you are. I simply brought up, Congressman, a series of bills that we have talked about on a significant basis on this show, and I wanted my audience to know exactly how you voted if they're not familiar with you. Go ahead.
Well, Roland, every time I start to make an example, you ask another question. You don't even give me an opportunity.
No, I've actually let you finish a number of questions. I just had another question. Go ahead.
Now, to the question about President Trump, if he ran in 24, would I support him? Yeah, because I'm a Republican. I'm going to support the Republican nominee. I'm going to be out in front to make sure that a Republican takes the White House. But the real question is, why would I do that? Because my viewpoint is, go ahead, put the picture up. My viewpoint is... That's
what we do. It's called a television show. We produce it. So, yeah.
I ain't got no problem with that.
Yeah, so I'm saying, okay, that's what we do. Go ahead.
Finish. My point is that I believe that conservative principles, that limited government, that lower spending from the federal level, that a lower base tax policy that leaves more hands in the hands of more people, especially small business owners, actually promotes an economy that can grow and thrive, where even people who grew up poor like me, they can actually earn more money and have more ladders of opportunity in our economy. I believe that parents should have the same purchasing power, poor families, as wealthy families do, and that they shouldn't just be put into an educational system because of where they live. I think they should have access to those educational opportunities wherever they may be. And if government funding follows that child, they should do that. I believe that in healthcare, we should have a robust health insurance economy so people can find a policy that suits their needs. Because what happens right now is that when you factor in deductibles and you factor in premiums, people are spending more money just to have the policy itself and don't have the disposable income to fully access the care under the policy. Those are Republican ideals. That's what I support.
Well, actually, to be honest,
I think it would actually be helpful for the Black community, whether they're poor members of the Black community, middle-income members of the Black community, upper middle-income members of the Black community, or even rich Black people, and that will also be helpful for all of America at the same time.
But the Affordable Care Act actually played a significant role in decreasing the number of African Americans who had no access to health care. Second of all, that was actually a Republican plan because it came from Mitt Romney out of Massachusetts. And thirdly, Donald Trump had 4 years and not one time to even present even remotely a health care plan. And not only that, let's just also be clear. Donald Trump loves to play footsie with white supremacists. So you, after what we experienced for 4 years, you would welcome having that back in the White House. You can be Republican. A lot of Republicans out there who are Republicans, hardcore Republicans, but who did not support that man. But you would willingly stand behind him after what all he did for 4 years, including the newest revelations regarding getting the access to phone records of Democrats, even his own White House lawyer. You would want that back in the White House?
First of all, let me say, whatever Mitt Romney passed in Massachusetts is not conservative policy. Just because Mitt did it doesn't mean that I would.
But Mitt's a Republican.
I'm a conservative, Roland. Just because Mitt Romney did it doesn't mean that I would support it because it was bad policy in Massachusetts and it's bad policy for the country.
But you just said that you would support Donald Trump because he's a Republican. He would be the Republican nominee, but Mitt's a Republican. So you support some Republicans, not all.
I said I let you speak. Can I speak?
Yeah, go ahead.
I support conservative ideals. Just because a Republican puts something up, if it's not conservative, I'm not going to support it because it has to matter. It has to align itself with the principles that I just outlined about 30 seconds to a minute ago. The second thing I will tell you is this. What I fully support is an economy that grows and thrives, where income levels for all socioeconomic groups can actually rise, for all ethnicity groups can actually rise. What I do support is not having an economy that should be basically racing out of the gates, but is actually being stalled out because of massive overspending, talking about the COVID relief bill, that was not needed, that is actually holding our small businesses back. And our small business owners are white, Black, and Hispanic. They're across the spectrum in our United States. So I support an economy and policies that come from elected officials that are going to allow for all of us to thrive and not get caught up in these ideological arguments of, well, we believe higher taxes and more regulation work, when we already know you take more business out of you take more money out of small business. Who does that really hurt? It's not going to hurt rich people. It's going to hurt middle-income people and poor people who work for said small businesses. It does it every single time.
Well, I'll tell you what's actually hurting small businesses and poor folks. When you have the rich in this country not paying their fair share, the ProPublica stories breaks that down. So I would love to see Republicans actually. Hold on one second. I'm gonna finish and let you finish. I would love to see Republicans fully fund the IRS so they're not auditing folks who are in the middle class, but they're actually auditing the super rich in this country. Even they admit they don't have the funds because they've been cut by Republicans. But Republicans have cut their funds and not allowed them to do their job. Be nice if that happens.
Let me ask you this question.
Would you support that?
Hold on. Do you know when the most tax revenue was ever raised in the history of the United States, adjusted for inflation?
Tell us when.
It happened in 2018 and 2019. I sit on the budget committee, so I know the facts. The facts are the most tax revenue ever in the history of our country, both in dollar amount and as a percentage of the economy, happened in 2018 and 2019.
Did the deficit, you sit on the budget committee?
Hold on.
No. Since you sit on the budget committee, did the deficit under Trump increase in those same years?
I said 2018 and 2019. I didn't even raise the name of whose president was.
No, I'm asking. Did the federal deficit increase in 2018 and 2019?
They did, but I'm talking about tax policy. That's your question. You're talking about tax policy, right?
But the tax policy, that tax cut actually contributed to the deficit increasing. And I thought Republicans are fiscal conservatives.
Oh, that's not true. That's not true, and you know that because. And here's the deal.
Are you serious?
Hold on. Oh, I'm very serious because.
Oh, hold on. I just want to be clear. You're saying that the tax cut, the $1 trillion tax cut, did not increase the federal deficit. You said that that's not true.
I'm gonna make my point to you.
Go ahead.
The point I'm gonna make. If you look at what the estimates for what tax revenue were from the Congressional Budget Office under the Tax Cut and Jobs Act versus what tax revenue actually was from under the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, the federal government raised more money in revenue than CBO projected. So if you're going to project that tax revenue is going to be $2 billion, for argument's sake, and tax revenue is actually $2.5 billion, how is that a cut? Can you explain that to me? How does that add to the deficit when you bring more money in than you expect it to?
This is a piece right here, a couple of things I want to show you that I think is critically important, where the folks at Forbes, not the most liberal publication, talked about the federal deficit and how the Trump's tax cuts did lead to an increase in the federal deficit. But also, when you mention the issue about conservative and the Affordable Care Act, this is what Forbes also said on more than one occasion. President Obama has said the core idea behind Obamacare came from the Heritage Foundation, and PolitiFact raised the claim as mostly true. Heritage Foundation ain't the most moderate group. That's a very conservative foundation. And so looks like Democrats also took a Republican idea and made the Affordable Care Act. So it's kind of conservative.
Like I told you before, just because somebody puts their name on it from my side of the aisle doesn't mean I'm going to support it.
No, Con. What you said is, just because a Republican put their name on it, I'm not going to support it. You said, but I am a conservative. The Heritage Foundation is also a very right conservative foundation, right?
I don't agree with the policy because I've actually worked in insurance. My career is 17 years, finance, banking, and financial services and insurance. And if you run an insurance market that way, what you're going to have is what we do have. You're going to have policies and premiums that are too high for a lot of people to afford.
So where's the Republican health plan? Where is it?
Let me just finish it.
No, I'm just asking, where is it? I've been looking for it.
And then what you have is you have people who are trying to get the same insurance. They don't have the ability to afford it, so government has to come in with subsidies. When government comes in with subsidies, those are the things that actually add to the deficits that you were so concerned about from under the Tax Cut and Jobs Act.
Also, this is again from the folks at Bloomberg who laid this out, that the Trump tax cuts did take a bite out of revenue in this country, and that it said in the 2 years since the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 took effect on January 1st, 2018, the annual U.S. federal deficit has grown from $681 billion to a bit over $1 trillion, according to the Treasury Department. But those are the numbers there. Here's the deal here. I still would like to know, again, when you talk about being a part of the CBC, we'll see what they say. But what my audience is also asking here is they want to know specifically, not broad education, this, they would know. They would know specifically what things that you will support that specifically has a direct impact on the black community. That's one of the things that they also want to know.
If you're talking about police reform, criminal justice reform, healthcare, education policy, all those things have impacts on the black community. And the policies I support are reforms that actually unleash education, unleash healthcare to be more vibrant, to have far more options, far more choices, and actually help black families, or frankly any family for that matter, with respect to education specifically, have the purchasing power to go and find the environment that best suits their kids. If that doesn't help improve the lives of black families, it most certainly does, because when you give a family a choice, or let alone a black family a choice, where they can actually find the environment that best suits the needs of their children, that's going to help their children thrive and succeed. And I know you and I both want that.
Well, first of all, I'm somebody who co-founded School Choice is the Black Choice. That's not an issue for me. But what I also understand is that one of the fundamental problems that I do have with Republicans when it comes to education is what I'm seeing when it comes to textbooks, when it comes to this ridiculous thing they're doing, the attack on critical race theory, that's not even being taught in elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools. It makes no sense. Even the bill that was passed in your state made no sense whatsoever, because critical race theory is not taught taught in Florida schools. But again, we know critical race theory has become the boogeyman for all issues dealing with race in education. And so, yeah, I got a whole bunch of issues when it comes to the Republican Party on education. And let's be real clear, I've also been very critical of Democrats when it comes to the issue of charter schools, magnet schools, school choice as well. And so, frankly, I think in a lot of ways, both parties are full of shit when it comes to education, and they really don't care about the people, their agendas. You have the right who wants to take down teachers' unions, and then of course you have the left who wants to support them. But it all comes down to what's right for the child, and I'm not sure that people are real about that. Well, Congressman Donalds, glad to have you on the show. Certainly welcome you back again. Unfortunately, a lot of your white colleagues are too scared to come talk to black-owned media. I've offered a platform for more than a decade. Very, very few have actually accepted the opportunity. And so we'll see if they want to actually communicate with black folks and listen to them, they might want to come talk to black-owned media.
Listen, it was my pleasure to be here with you. Been watching you for a while, so I know you've been following a little bit of your career. It's my pleasure to be on. I know I'll be back on in the future.
All right, thanks a bunch. We appreciate it.
All right, you take it easy.
Folks, back to our Roland Mark Unfiltered video in just one moment.
Racial injustice is a scourge on this nation, and the black community has felt it for generations. We have an obligation to do something about it. Whether it's canceling student debt, increasing the minimum wage, or investing in black-owned businesses, the black community deserves so much better. I'm Nina Turner, and I'm running for Congress to do something about it.